Good afternoon, everyone. We will be getting started with our next webinar, Innovative Ways to Teach Online, Part 2, in 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janet Thibault, Branch Council Chair at International Dyslexia Association. I have the privilege to work with IDA's National Board their home office, and branch leaders. So on behalf of everyone at IDA, thank you so much for joining us for another Motivational Monday educational webinar. Before I get started, I just want to warn you that my neighbor decided that now would be a great time to start mowing their lawn, so I apologize in advance for any background noise. Today's topic is innovative ways to teach online. This is a second part in a series. Today we'll be focusing on sharing some teaching strategies. This was a very highly requested topic, so we hope you find lots of helpful information that you can use while working with your students remotely. Just to let you know what's coming up, our next two webinars are going to be basic rights, how to advocate for your child in these challenging times. And then we'll also be offering instructional strategies for online teaching part 3. So please continue to check our website and e-blasts for more information. And as usual, we're going to be drawing from our prizes tomorrow, and we'll notify you if you're a winner. Once our winners are confirmed, we'll announce them in an upcoming e-blast. And as always, if you're watching, please consider donating to IDA's COVID Relief Fund by clicking the donate link in the YouTube description or using the donate button on the Facebook page. This fund provides teachers and students in need with computers, laptops, tablets, software, tutoring assistant stipends, and advocacy supports for parents. So we're asking for just $1, so please consider supporting and sharing that opportunity with your friends. I want to now introduce our presenters for today. Jilly Darefsky has been recognized as an outstanding teacher of dyslexic students. She's the head of school at the Siena School, which is a 4th to 12th grade school serving students with language-based learning differences in Silver Spring, Maryland. She's dedicated her career to the field of special education. She holds a master's in specific learning difficulties and is currently pursuing a doctorate in education with a specialization in mind, brain, and teaching at Johns Hopkins University. Simon Kanter is the director of technology at the Siena School with over 8 years of experience leading technology initiatives in schools. His expertise includes training teachers in the integration of technology for students with dyslexia. He has presented locally and nationally at the NAIS Tech Conference, a colloquium showcasing authentic assessment, and as a panelist and presenter for a variety of EdTech topics at the NBOA conference. Please welcome both our presenters, and I'm going to turn the screen over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and bear with me really quickly while I get this shared. Thank you all to those of you attending. Thank you to those of you watching this later. To answer one of the most popular questions we got in advance, yes, these slides will be available. They'll be posted up on our website at the conclusion of the talk. We are going to take this opportunity today to talk to you about a broad array of virtual teaching tools. And as we go, we're going to consider how they support the instructional principles for the provision of structured literacy, as outlined in the International Dyslexia Association's Knowledge and Practice Standards for Teachers of Reading. From these KPS standards, we distilled that fundamentally sound reading instruction includes modeling, explicit instruction, meaningful language interactions, opportunities for practice and reinforcement, and two-way feedback, both collected from and given to the students. We're going to present to you a series of tools that are broken up into categories according to their use cases, but you'll probably see the tools more than once. We're trying to present to you a broad array of very powerful tools that have multiple uses, and you'll be able to quickly envision how the lessons that you typically do can be recreated or even enhanced by these tools. We're going to attempt to tie each of the categories and tools back to one of these 5 main accomplishments that we're trying to make from those knowledge and practice standards. So first, we wanted to offer some tips for recreating parts of your classroom practice online. I think that many teachers have been at a loss for what to do without a way to display handwriting or a way to replicate the traditional front of the room whiteboard instruction. And others have struggled to implement effective multisensory teaching without the use of manipulatives. And while there are limitations to these technologies, many of the things that you can do in the classroom can actually be replicated online with the clever use of cameras. We have cameras all around us all the time. There's one attached to my computer right now. There's one built into nearly every laptop. There's one in every phone and every tablet. And so we have lots of these devices in our houses. Using a document camera and a whiteboard slate, or even a sheet of paper, for instance, can mimic a wall-mounted whiteboard. I do have to note here, if you're looking at buying a document camera, you want to make sure it's one that has a USB connection and can display on your computer, as many models are only built to work with TVs or projectors. But if you don't have a document camera already, or you can't get one, you can use a phone, a tablet, a second computer, another webcam plugged into your computer to effectively join any kind of video conferencing call twice, or with 2 different camera perspectives. And you can also mirror your smartphones or tablets onto your computer. There are applications such as the Connect app on Windows 10, or AirPlay on Apple devices, or third-party options like AirServer that allow you to connect devices onto your computer so that you could effectively be handwriting or demonstrating an app on your iPad and have the students within your video conference call see what's happening on that screen and your PC screen at the same time. Other creative ways of using cameras, you can use a second device to set up a different camera angle view. Here's an example of a document camera used for a science experiment. And you could, for instance, have one camera, the main camera on your laptop, pointed at your face, while a secondary camera is looking at the tabletop or pointed at your hands at an angle, or at a different whiteboard or stand-up easel with paper on it. So this can really enhance the demonstrations that you're doing and allow you to effectively visually multitask for the students to better model for them. You can also use recorded video. You can use screen sharing applications such as Screencastify or the screen recording feature on an iPad. Loom is another really great one to use. And there are a host of other screen recording applications that will allow you to record what's happening on your computer in advance, and then either share that video during a video conference, a synchronous class, or share it after the fact or as homework. And now Jilly is going to talk more about how to move away from primarily auditory instruction.
Thank you, Simon. So when teaching online, it is easy to slip into primarily auditory instruction, but it's more important than ever to continue to integrate visual, kinesthetic, and tactile strategies. Engaging with the tools we're presenting today helps to maintain multisensory teaching online. Many educators didn't have the luxury of providing standard manipulatives to their students before school buildings closed. So we encourage you to get creative with manipulatives and have students use items from around their home. For example, does the student have Legos or miniature toy cars for phonological awareness activities? Carpet or textured material for tactile tracing? If you have students angle their computers so their camera is directed at their paper, dry erase board, or manipulatives, you can observe their work. By seeing their work in real time, you can continue your diagnostic teaching, identifying where they're obtaining mastery and where students need more practice. You can use the document camera to model the manipulation of sounds or syllables, or project text you want the students to read. This is helpful for assessments because you can watch the students track the words as they read on the screen. With synchronous teaching through the webcam, many strategies that are used in the classroom can still be implemented online. For example, rhyming activities, air riding, sound tapping, and punching syllables in the air. Cameras also allow you to capture an image of students' work to analyze later or for record keeping.
Another very common question that we got before this presentation was, what platform is best for delivering content to students online? Now, there are a lot of factors that go into this, such as what video conferencing software you might want to use. We found that at the one-to-one level, if you're just working individually with students or in very small groups, all of them are mostly interchangeable. But if you're working with large classes synchronously, we landed on the Zoom video conferencing app as the best one to use. But beyond that, how are you going to work with students collaboratively? There are a couple of major online platforms that allow you to work simultaneously within many different kinds of documents with students. We're a Google Apps school, so we're going to be talking a lot about G Suite for Education, which includes Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, Google Drawings, and many, many other things. And it's also tied to Gmail. But there's also a great suite of products from Microsoft under the Office 365 label. If your school or if your students' schools are signed up for these things, they'll have access to those accounts already. You can also opt to get them for yourself as an individual as well. And most of the features are available for free or for a very low monthly rate. We want to talk a lot about Google Apps here. At its most basic level, you can use it to create collaborative documents, spreadsheets, and slideshows. But it also has really excellent enhanced features, like it allows you to plug in add-ons onto each of those individual functions. Tools like read and write that give you assistive tools like text-to-speech, screen masking, highlighting, speech-to-text input, things like that. These tools are online and collaborative, meaning you can also easily make templates or make copies for the students to fill out using tools like Google Classroom. I wanted to show you at its most basic level what Google Docs can do. I've made a sample document here where you can see we have a series of tables that split up the page into various parts. You can color code things by background or by text color. You can insert icons, and you can edit and use different text features to rearrange things. So I've just demonstrated some of the features in here, like highlighting rhyming words, bolding words that you want to look into more, breaking them out into tables, things like that. We'll be coming back to this document to demonstrate some of the other capabilities of Google Docs as we go along.
So knowing how to use docs and slides creates a foundation for the integration of the other tools discussed today, and they can be used either individually or collaboratively between students. At Siena, we use a multisensory writing program called Step Up to Writing, and all graphic organizers and rubrics are available to the students through Google Docs. The integrated speech-to-text tool allows students to dictate their work, avoiding the barriers of typing and spelling that sometimes impede our students. Telling students to simply imagine talking to someone about their ideas can help overcome the difficulty of getting their ideas onto paper. As a collaborative tool, by using Docs, teachers can also watch students create their written pieces in real time, providing another way to analyze students' use of syntax to better provide students with individualized feedback and strategies. In Docs, teachers can also add feedback either through written comments or an audio message for students to access asynchronously. Webs, sentence starters, and more can be pre-created for students, and our teachers also use the Zoom screen share feature to model writing or create a collaborative piece of writing as a class. A nice feature of Google Docs is you can see how long a student has spent working on the assignment, as well as view their revision history, so you can see what changes they made. These features provide another diagnostic tool to evaluate the child's writing process and help inform instructional strategies. Worksheets can be shared, and students can then interact with them using assistive technology. Word banks are easily accessible in Docs, and assessments can be administered. In Slides, teachers and students can create flashcards for sound syllable associations, drills, games, and more. Slides can also help structure your class by providing a daily objective, agenda, and homework slide that has links to all the resources the students need. This organization helps students with their executive functioning by creating one place to go to for all their materials, and Simon will demonstrate this shortly. If this is all new to you and there were only 2 tools within G Suite to become familiar with, we'd recommend Docs and Slides.
Once you are familiar with the basics of something like Google Docs or with Office 365 Word, and you're ready to move on to make your lessons even more interactive, visually rich, and multisensory, then moving on to something like Slides or even Google Forms is a great way to start. Slides and Forms allows you to easily insert things like audio and video and to collect feedback from students. This is an example of a Google Slide template that I made for our teachers to project at the beginning of their class periods during our synchronous online learning. So you can already see that this is much preferable from a visual set perspective to just using a Google Doc to do the same thing. It has space to put in a picture. You can insert pictures from a number of different sources, from your computer, from the web, from Google Drive, from your computer's camera, or again, from any kind of photo library that you have. And it also is home to animations. You can animate these slides and produce transitions or different kinds of animations within it to make them really pop. I also wanted to show you some examples of quickly of Google Forms. You can insert pictures directly into Google Forms, either as part of the question or as part of the answer, actually. Each answer can have its own picture associated with it, which makes it a really rich multisensory way of assessing student knowledge. You can use those as entrance tickets or as quizzes, or simply as reflections for students to work on. If you have data that you need to represent in a very visual way, or you have a story narrative that you'd really like students to visualize, then using a tool like Canva can be really helpful for making rich infographics. Canva is an easy to use tool that allows you to create infographics from stock images and clip art, and a very handy shape selector and text options. And this is an example of a graphic that we created. This is our elementary school expectations for online learning. And so we have 6 things that we wanted our elementary school students to keep in mind as we started learning from home. These have proven to be really, really helpful. When we were in our building, we used these to communicate our expectations around the school and to announce events. But presenting information visually is really easy using tools like Canva. Powtoon is a really excellent way of making animations, simply. Again, these are all stock animations that are available within Powtoon. It's excellent for illustrating any kind of narrative content that goes chronologically. This is an example from our website about basics about language-based learning differences. You can create these for your students or have your students create these as a product to turn back into you if they prefer to work more visually. Next, we wanted to talk about another very specific kind of graphic organizer, which is mind maps. Mind maps are a fantastic way of organizing information about words and concepts. There are dozens of options available for you to use on every device and any kind of platform that you might be working in. They all have basically the same set of features. So I encourage you to check them out on your own. The one that we use that I can show off to you is called Mindomo. And Mindomo has the ability to produce an anchor concept in the center, and then concepts that branch off of that with subcategories. You can change the color of the text in the boxes. You can change the shape of the boxes, and many, many other styles and visual settings within this. You can color code things, which is very helpful, change the size of them. But this is great for activities such as root webs. And Mindomo even has a feature that can turn your visual mind maps into text-based outlines for your older students that are working on composing longer pieces of writing.
So teachers need to model how to create a mind map so that students can engage with the strategy in a variety of ways. As Simon has demonstrated, color and images are essential components as students use mind maps for organizing their ideas. For morphology instruction, students enjoy building mind maps to create root webs, an activity that can also be used in all subject areas to support structured literacy throughout the school. Other ways to incorporate mind mapping include categorizing activities or for reading comprehension. And mind maps provide another way for students to work together collaboratively in an online environment.
Next, we had a ton of questions about this, about virtual whiteboards. So let's say that you can't get a document camera working on your setup, you don't have access to one, or you're just interested in getting some more multimedia interactive features for the students when they're on their computers. For getting kids engaged where they can actually manipulate things on the screen during a common lesson, you'll want to look into some virtual whiteboard tools. These have gained prominence very rapidly in the last couple of years, and especially since the start of distance learning in many districts. I'm going to discuss these tools in order from the least capable to the most capable, starting with the whiteboard that's built into Zoom. And I can't demonstrate it without stopping my screen share right now. I trust that most people that have used Zoom to teach have tried using the whiteboard, but it allows you the basics of stamping simple icons like arrows. You can scribble on it with a mouse, or if you have stylus input on your computer. You can also type in text. And all of the basic collaborative virtual whiteboards allow you to do that. In Zoom, it also allows the participants, so your students, to also annotate on top of the whiteboard that you have displayed on the screen. However, this feature doesn't work on Chromebooks because they don't have the necessary touch input drivers in order to be able to do that in Zoom. So many teachers asked, are there other options? The next two after that, Whiteboardify and Google Jamboard. Google Jamboard is a product that's specific to schools that have the G Suite for Education module. So instead, I'm going to show you Whiteboardify, and this is an example from one of our classes on how it works. You can go straight to the website and create a board without logging in. You send a link to your students, and you all collaborate simultaneously on a whiteboard that accepts text, shapes, colors, and handwriting. And again, this is the most useful with a graphics tablet or some kind of stylus touch input on your device. So mirroring a tablet or something onto your computer is a really great way of doing it. But if you have decent hand-eye coordination and a big enough mouse pad, it's also possible to do without those things. The next tool I wanted to talk about is actually Google Slides. Google Slides, since you can work on it all at the same time collaboratively, you can actually use it as a collaborative whiteboard. And again, it can include videos, it can include pictures, shapes, animations, all those things. You could make one slide for each person in your class within a slideshow and then assign them to work on that, or assign them to small groups, or do it all as one class. Google Slides accepts handwriting input with the Scribble tool, which is pretty neat. I saved the most powerful one for last. I want to show you an app called Miro. Miro has just renewed their ability for schools to get free licenses. It's an app that's mostly made for software developers, but it's actually really, really powerful tool for multimedia instruction. I've created a sample board here that we can go through. It's a lot to take in, but I'm just going to show you the basics of what Miro can do. You can see that it's an extremely large open-ended canvas that we can work on. And within it, we can do things like place typed text. We can place sticky notes of different colors. We can make easy to draw shapes that have text inside of them that we can edit. We can actually use hand drawing to make shapes and icons or write words. It has its own library of icons that we can choose from. It's a searchable database. And then in the enhanced features, it also allows us to directly embed Google Docs right within the space. So you can have the Google Doc over here. If it's multiple pages, it'll let you page through it. And it's a live document. So when you make changes to it in Google Docs, here I can actually edit this one, and it pops it up right inside this window and lets me edit. And then once I'm done, I can close out of it, and it will reload the document with the changes updated. It also allows you to embed videos directly into it. So you can include instructions, feedback, or modeling examples directly in the assignment for students. You can either use this as a front of the room tool where you're all collaborating on the same whiteboard at the same time, or you can give these as templates or assignments to students for them to fill out independently.
So as Simon has demonstrated, there are a variety of virtual whiteboards to choose from, depending on the complexity of content you wish to use. And they allow you to integrate the same multisensory classroom activities, but online. Vowel coding, segmenting words, sound hunts, spelling, parts of speech, sentence construction, and more can be completed using a virtual whiteboard to continue the focus on sound symbol association, syllable instruction, morphology, syntax, and semantics.
Next, we wanted to talk about if you don't have access to manipulatives and if your students don't have it at home, what are some digital alternatives you could use? One that we just learned about is called Flippity. And what this does is it takes a spreadsheet full of items that you put in, and then it turns it into basically a set of digital manipulatives. You can see from this recording that we have made a spreadsheet of different vowel sounds and word sounds, letter tiles, and you can adjust the background of the Flippity so that students can drag the things into different categories. And I believe that students can do it on their own or collaboratively as a class as well. Now, these don't have the power to to make sounds when you click on them, but at least you can sort them visually and by color. Other tools, however, that we have will allow us to do that. There is a Phonogram Sounds app from All About Learning Press. It's got a little live demo in here. You can see that as we hover over the tiles, they highlight. If I were to click on these, they would display a couple of all the pronunciations of that team, vowel team or consonant team or alphabet, and then as well as where they may be placed in the word and other relevant facts like that. We also found on the App Store, there are a number of Orton Gillingham tools that are available. This one is a card deck. And again, this is something that if you have screen mirroring set up on your PC or Mac, you can use this during your classes synchronously, or you can assign these things to students to work on their own time. We also have Smart Notebook is available if your school or institution has access to smart technology, so smart boards. You probably also have a license for Smart Notebook, which you can use. Smart Notebook is really wonderful because it also has a library of activities and resources online that teachers can use and have contributed. Google Drawings are a really great way of making digital manipulatives as well. One thing that many people don't know about Google Drawings is that it's kind of like MS Paint, but multiple people can be working in it at the same time. So you could create little letter tiles on your own and then include those in and manipulate them around on the screen. The last digital manipulative tool I wanted to show you is called Padlet. Here's an example of a Padlet that I've made. Padlet is, loosely speaking, a corkboard, but virtual style. You can pin notes to it by double-clicking anywhere in it, and you and collaborators can do this. So you can invite your students into your Padlet and then have them join you and move things around on the screen. You can sort the different sticky notes into categories. And if you double click on the page, you can insert all kinds of content into the Padlet. You can make a link to another website, upload an image or a file. You can take a snapshot from your video camera or film a video clip. You can record just an audio clip as well, or do a drawing like I have with this lovely Mayflower. Artistic skills not included. So one of the next type of tool that we wanted to cover is how to make your lessons a little bit more interactive. And so we had a lot of questions about people about making lessons more engaging. And if you find yourself giving a lot of lessons based on slide presentations or typical front of the room instruction, and you're wondering if there's a way to make those more interactive for the students, then these tools are something that you're absolutely going to want to look at. Pear Deck, Deck Toys, and the new Smart Learning Suite actually make your slideshows into interactive lessons where students are periodically asked to respond to questions and ideas. They're asked to check for understanding, and they actually have the opportunity to demonstrate their understanding through simple questions and games. These tools let you select a response type that you want to get from students, whether it would be text, multiple choice, they can submit drawings, or you can do draggable graphics. Here's an example that we have of Pear Deck, which is an add-on for Google Slides. You build the presentation in Google Slides, and then you import it into Pear Deck effectively, and then you can do things like this. Here, the students are asked to drag the blue dot to the space where that accurately describes what they're feeling. So they have 3 different options that are color-coded with visual cues from these nice little cartoon guys. And the students are doing this on their device while you are presenting from your device in the Zoom meeting. Deck Toys is also a really fantastic way of presenting information in a very engaging and interactive way. You can pitch questions to the entire class. The question pops up on their device. So on the left-hand side, you're seeing the teacher view. On the right-hand side, you're getting the student view. So you'll see that the teacher has started a sorting question, and the students are asked to drag things into the correct category. Deck Toys can also be used asynchronously. It's great. You can create these self-paced lessons based on a map that you create where the students can pick their own path according to the reinforcement, or practice that they need. You can see it here a little bit where the students can pick multiple paths to getting across this bridge. The Smart Learning Suite is brand new, and they're giving teachers trial access for a limited amount of time. It has some of the same features that these have. It's a little bit more limited, but in some ways more intuitive. And the last thing I want to plug here is Ed Puzzle interactive videos. if you're giving videos for your students to watch, or if you're showing videos to the whole class while you're meeting in a video conference, then consider using Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is a really fantastic tool that allows you to insert questions directly into a video that you want the students to watch, so that it will pause, prompt them with the question, and then continue after they answer it. Next, we wanted to talk a little bit more about assistive technology. And this is where I have a chance to give you a demo of a tool called Read and Write. This is by a company named Text Help Incorporated. They make a variety of assistive apps for students. I get to it by clicking on a button in my toolbar, which is slightly outside of your view, but I get this very nice, clean toolbar of additional assistive tools to use in Google Docs. The biggest and best one that we use all the time at Siena is the play button. I can highlight text within a document, and by the way, this works on all web pages as well, and I can hit play. And you probably can't hear it from my computer, but you can see that the computer is actually reading the text and highlighting each word as it reads it aloud. It has a variety of different voices and language options, including speed, tone, pitch, and other settings like that. The other great features of the Read and Write toolbar are the picture dictionary and the word dictionary, which you can access right within the window that you're looking in, so you don't have to tab out. It also has a word prediction engine. It has highlighting features and the ability to automatically collect highlights of like color and then export them into another document. Another feature we really like, both for individual reading comprehension and front of the room instruction, is the screen mask. The screen mask allows you to basically black out parts of the screen and only display a segment in the middle to focus students' attention on what you're looking at. This can help for students that jump to the center of the page or the bottom of the page before starting at the top to focus their attention. The mask is fully customizable. You can make it more or less opaque. You can also adjust the height of the line to be broader or narrower. Lastly, a feature that I'll mention a little bit more about later, you can highlight things and then insert voice notes. You can record a voice recording directly on a student document or on an assignment that you're handing out to give more information and detail that would be tedious or difficult to comprehend if it was only text. I wanted to mention speech to text now. This has rapidly gained popularity as commercial technologies adopt speech to text widely. We have Alexas in our homes now. We have TV remotes we can talk to. All major word processors, including Microsoft Word, Office 365, and Google Docs, have built-in speech to text engines that are available in the menus. And additionally, most devices now also have a speech to text option where any place you can put text, you can click a microphone button and input it by voice instead. So you may notice this on Chromebooks or on your smartphones. When you click in a text field, on your keyboard, you get a little microphone icon that allows you to talk into it. I also wanted to show off Mercury Reader. This is a Chrome extension. It's a little app that simplifies a web page and it makes it easier to read. So you can see in this example, we're on the IDA website here, and there's a page with lots of great information. By right-clicking on the page and selecting Mercury Reader, we get a single column of text that's cleaned up that still includes the pictures and links from the original documents. You can also adjust the text to be serif or sans serif. You can adjust the font size and also the color of the background as well. A very simple tool that is very effective at what it does. Lastly, if you or your students are working on a Chromebook or a Chrome box, there is an accessibility menu in Chrome OS, which I have a picture of here. And you can see that there are a number of different options for getting spoken feedback from the computers, selecting objects or menus on the computer and having it read back. You can dictate directly into any text box, turn on high contrast mode. There are a few options for magnifications and other such things as on-screen keyboards if your students prefer to touch the screen instead of the keyboard. There are more options below that also that allow you to turn on things like an enlarged cursor and a highlighting feature, which will highlight your cursor anytime it moves to better draw student attention towards the things that you want to demonstrate. Next.
Thank you, Simon.
We also wanted to talk about feedback here and ways to give it and ways to get it. First, we're going to talk about how to receive feedback from students really easily. I'm going to skip order here really quickly, but in Zoom and also in many other video conferencing tools, there are really easy ways to just get a quick check from your students. Having them move around physically, showing you thumbs up if they're understanding, middle, or down if they need more help. There are also emojis that are available that you can use in the participants tab of Zoom that allow you to do basic up, check or X, thumbs up, thumbs down, different things like that. There are also tools like Straw Poll Me. This is a very simple website that allows you to create a poll in seconds by typing in the questions and the answers that you want. It generates a unique link that you send out to your students, and they can click on it and then just check the answer that they want, and you get the results right away. It's a great thing to do for entrance tickets. It's a great thing to do for checks, basic checks for understanding, or just to keep your students giving input over the course of the lesson to see where they want to go and keep them engaged. You could also use Google Forms for more complicated forms of feedback. This was an example of one where we asked students to make their choice for the required summer reading book. And you can see that based on what grade they select, it's actually going to give them a different book. So you can have branching options within Google Forms to personalize things and individualize them for students. The more advanced forms of feedback that you can give back to students, rather than just commenting on their documents or giving them a grade or rubric, you can actually record a video where you screencast yourself going over their assignment. You can also use a voice note application like that built into Read and Write, or there's another third-party app called Kaizena, which will allow you to record your voice and tie it to specific objects in a Google Doc or slideshow, and the students can go back and listen to it. You can also use this as a way of providing, like I said, more information and details when giving assignments.
Apologies for interrupting. So as Simon was saying, you know, the feedback is absolutely critical, and making sure that it's very, very specific. Because one of the things you may have noticed with online teaching is that it's really very, very tiring. We have found that a 30-minute synchronous class is the right length of time to engage our students online. So as such, you want to encourage accessible resources that can support students' independent practice. Learning Ally has been essential to support independent reading for the majority of our students. The ability to engage in ear and eye reading simultaneously means students can develop a love of reading as they enjoy the content of the book without decoding and fluency difficulties impacting their engagement with the text. Epic is a digital library for children aged 12 and under. It provides a wealth of resources online to provide reading opportunities even when the library is closed. We've also found that Membean is a wonderful practice tool. It supports vocabulary development, and InVocabulary is a visual vocabulary and reasoning program, again, to help with the independent practice for the students.
We have some other tools for practice. You're probably familiar with using flashcards to practice. This is applicable in every subject. We use these widely throughout our school in many, many age ranges. One great thing, the best tool for this is usually Quizlet. This is an example of something that I made for one of my classes. One of the great things about it is that you can actually, the text that you enter onto these cards, when you or the students click on it, it reads it back to you. You can also include images in the flashcards to help cement that information, and then obviously flipping them to reveal the answer or vice versa. This tool also includes a variety of options for practicing. You can go and play a matching game where you want to match the terms together. I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to play this right now and talk at the same time, but it automatically allows you to turn study sets into games for reinforcement, which is really fantastic. We showed you an example of Flippity, which is really fantastic for using manipulatives. And you can replicate Google flashcards on Google Slides and include rich information such as voice recordings and images and videos.
So interactive lessons are essential to maintain student engagement. It's something we're all aware, but trying to maintain that engagement when online can be a little bit more challenging. It's really important to remember that students need to be seen and heard throughout the class so they don't feel invisible. You need to create new norms for expectations in the online classroom, ideally co-constructing them with the students. To help with this, counselor and former administrator Jen Court wrote an article for the Association of Middle Level Education titled Creating Norms When Nothing is Normal. Some students find it distracting to be able to view themselves online. One of the things you can do to encourage them is to turn off their self-view. This means that they won't be distracted so much by being able to view themselves as they're speaking. Be empathetic and demonstrate your belief in the students' abilities. Don't be afraid to gather feedback from students about what activities they enjoy and what are more difficult. Google Forms is an easy way to survey the students, and the example on the right is Siena's weekly survey to gather student input. Multisensory learning doesn't just apply to the actual instruction, but when teaching online, it's critical to find as many ways to have students move as possible. For example, you can integrate physical checks for understanding, such as giving a thumbs up, putting hands on their heads, touching the right or the left shoulder to indicate a choice, or even standing up to show a response to a question. We have other ideas in a blog. Go Noodle is another active resource that can be incorporated at the beginning of class to have students practice their ability to cross the midline through fun and engaging activities. Incorporating movement into games, for example, having students back away from the computer, write an answer to a question on a personal whiteboard or notebook, and then run back to their computers to share their answers, is one fun way just to integrate movement into a simple activity. Or if they think a letter has a short sound, have them bring their hands together, or for a long sound, stretch their arms out wide apart. You can create games such as bingo and share individual boards through G Suite, and project a game board with your document camera. Smart Notebook allows you to make interactive lessons, and you can add letter tiles, spinners, and dice. You may poll students using Zoom as a warm-up to see what they remember from the previous lesson, or use a polling system like Simon demonstrated earlier. And don't forget to move offline as well. For example, engaging students in a scavenger hunt where they have to find objects that begin with a particular sound. If you use a platform like Zoom and have the capability to utilize breakout rooms, you can put one student in each breakout room while they work independently, and then drop in and out of each room to provide private, individualized feedback. In Zoom breakout rooms, the students can also indicate to you if they need your help. If you're fortunate to have a paraeducator, it allows you as the reading teacher to give direct instruction in the main room, while the paraeducator supports independent work or small group discussions in the breakout rooms. It's important to integrate each student's strengths and interests, so try to vary the activities you incorporate into your class. Monologues, poetry, readers' theatre, tongue twisters are just a few ways to practice fluency, and book clubs provide opportunities to assess reading comprehension. For those of you working with adults or high school students, don't forget to think outside the box. For example, asking them to create dating app profiles of the main characters are one way to maintain engagement of older students. And finally, don't be afraid to get creative to maintain student interest. Small group work, pairs, one-on-one conferencing can all be incorporated throughout a class. Additionally, we find that our students remain more engaged when there's a performance at the end of the unit, and this can be a welcome opportunity for parents to be invited into the online classroom. So we have provided some additional resources in response to questions that we've received. We have information about additional apps that can be found at the University of Michigan's Dyslexia Help website. And also the International Dyslexia Association website has a very helpful article about iPad apps for literacy instruction. Furthermore, there were numerous questions about where to find decodable books. So we've provided 3 resources here: the Specific Learning Difficulties Association of South Australia, Reading A through Z, and an article that lists additional free online decodable books. And what's important about all of these is that they are freely available online and accessible and downloadable for use. So these slides will be available at Siena School's website. And we did receive hundreds of questions that we worked really hard to try and incorporate into this webinar. and we hope that we've addressed the majority of them in the presentation. But there were a few that we wanted to highlight. One was, how can I teach online and integrate OG multisensory teaching strategies? So remembering that OG is multisensory, sequential, incremental, cumulative, individualized, and explicit is really important even in the online environment. You want to start by thinking about what you would normally teach during a class and how that can be replicated online. For example, as the teacher, you can use the webcam when using sound cards, and we've provided a link to an online version. You can also project text using a document camera or scan it into a Google Doc. Students can stand while they're engaged in the class, especially for gross motor activities. Activities such as trace, copy, cover, and close can still occur during an online class. And as you can see from the different tools demonstrated today, online teaching doesn't have to be so different. Now, the question we received was about how I can help my youngest students stay engaged. Now, it's important to remember that while you probably didn't choose to teach online, neither did your students choose to learn online. So it's important to remain empathetic, especially to their developmental needs. At Siena, we wrote about a blog about setting up your workplace for distance learning that includes suggestions for flexible seating throughout the day. For example, is it possible to provide a standing desk in some format for the student? Providing this flexibility is one way to maintain student engagement. As previously discussed, our students need to be able to move around. So think about how a child can move their whole body and incorporate that into games. Additionally, by incorporating assistive technology, it will remove the frustrating barriers that can inhibit our younger students from remaining engaged. And also building in structure, for example, the daily slide that Simon demonstrated earlier. If you're a parent, you can also build in structure. For example, create visuals for the daily schedule that can be posted prominently, and even checklists for cleanup. Build in regular breaks. For example, we have 5-minute movement breaks between every class. And maybe even put a list of ideas into a jar so that students can pull different activities, and it can make it fun and surprising about what type of physical activities they can do during the break. And then as a parent, there was a lot of questions about what should your child practice every day. Now, reading, writing, and math are the main focus, but you can do it in an authentic way. Practicing eye and ear reading simultaneously for 20 minutes a day is a really good goal. Paired reading, where you and your child take it in turns to read, can also be fun. And the 20 minutes doesn't have to happen in all in one go. You can spread it out over the course of the day. Try to make asynchronous learning fun with games and activities. There's a wealth of online math games. For example, our students particularly enjoy Prodigy. And there's manipulatives such as learning wrap-ups that help students practice basic math skills, even if it's only for 5 to 10 minutes a day. Try to be authentic. Use cooking and money to practice math skills. And even writing can be incorporated through smaller activities, such as writing the shopping list or a reminder to a parent. This way, the students start realizing that they're practicing those skills. Simon is now going to talk about some of the more practical concerns that were raised.
From a technology perspective, we got a lot of questions, loosely broken into a couple of categories. We got a couple of questions about a very important topic, which is, are there any privacy concerns with teaching remotely? And the answer is that yes. Teaching remotely may feel very different in a lot of ways, but in some ways you're still working with the same students you know. The difference is that you have a live view into their home, and there are other people in their home all the time now, and they may in fact be working in the same space. This is another reason why getting a really nice dedicated space for students to work within their home is essential to the kind of learning that we want them to do. You also want to be very careful about the types of things that are happening in the background of your screen and also in theirs. If they're in a spot where you can see a large portion of their house, you might consider asking them to turn to face so that the camera faces a wall or something like that. And you also want to be sure that there's not too much background noise, both for the sake of them being distracted, but also so that you don't overhear anything that is intended to be private. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go into the legal components of this that I do know. But one thing I can tell you is that there is a special caution that has to be taken if you're planning to record any of the lessons that you do with students. Recording things in someone else's home is a place where there's a high expectation of privacy from them. And so you should be aggressive in seeking affirmative consent from everybody involved, students, parents, administrators, everyone, before you record any lessons that you have with students. Another very practical question that we got a series of was, why don't some of the interactive features work on Chromebooks? You could replace Chromebooks with any kind of device. And this leads into a larger question of basically, how should I approach teaching with technology tools? One of the things that's really important is that you build the lesson around the matter that you want to convey to the students and around the type of way that you want them to do it. Don't build the lesson around the tool, because even if the technology is compatible with the device that they're on and the device that you're on any given day, you might run into an unforeseen technological problem. There's some degree of this to which you can't work around this, like you'll need an internet connection to interface with your students directly if you're doing a synchronous lesson, and there's nothing that can replace that. But if you plan your lessons with a variety of tech tools where you're touching lightly on each of them and not going all in on one, then you're way more likely to be more resilient when a tech problem does occur. And in our experience, they always will. So it really helps to be flexible. Lastly, and very quickly, I wanted to plug a couple of places you could find resources. It's really actually the same resource, but Common Sense Media actually publishes a reviewed set list of applications that they update constantly. These are educational apps for students. You can organize by age, by entertainment type. You can look specifically at ones that are educational, and then also by device type. And then there's one for educators. This is a slightly smaller list, but extremely powerful, and it allows you to show tools that teachers can use with students for any kind of subject and any kind of use. And it includes a lot of the tools that I've talked about today and about a gazillion other ones that I didn't have time to mention. So these are both really good starting places to look, rather than sifting through a dozen listicles with clickbait titles about the best apps to use in distance learning. I would recommend keep trying to think of what you want to accomplish with your students, and then looking for an app that does that thing using the Common Sense EdTech Review engine. And again, you'll be able to click these links in the presentation from our website. That is our presentation for today. Thank you so much for listening and for tuning in, everybody. If you're interested in finding more research, more resources, you can find us on social media at the Siena School. You can find our website at thesienaschool.org. And on our website, or on this link in particular, you can find access to our blog, where we're posting weekly updates about topics relevant to distance learning. Thank you all for your attention. And I believe that Janet has a couple more questions for us.
Yes, thank you
Excellent.
so much to Jilly and Simon for that really informative information and for answering so many of the questions that came to you beforehand and embedding that right into your webinar. That was really helpful. We do have just a little bit of time for a few more questions. One was, would either of you be able to offer some suggestion for how often a teacher should check in with students via polling and some of the other tools that you've mentioned?
So we have found that regular check-ins are really important, and Simon can probably speak to more to the technological skills, but we found even simple strategies that we used in the classroom are continually relevant today. For example, just giving the thumbs up or sideways or down in terms of understanding. It's a really quick way of checking in with the students. There's going to be a variety of people in the audience today. Some may only have one student, may have 10, some may have 20 in the classroom, but you do want to be checking in with the students on a regular basis, particularly as you're transitioning from one activity to another, to ensure that they're understanding what it is that's expected from them.
Great, thank you for that.
If I may add, it's important from an understanding and a differentiation angle, but it's also important just for keeping students engaged. It, for one thing, reminds them that you are looking at them as they're there. Sometimes they forget that they're on camera, but also, you know, we don't have a lot of the same tools and redirections to prevent students from being on a second device or watching the TV that's on in the other room in their house or things like that. So checking in with them often, using a variety of different polling and feedback strategies is really valuable for maintaining their engagement.
Great.
And a lot of these technological tools, for example, Zoom, as Simon mentioned earlier, has emojis that the students can select. They can even actually indicate to the teacher if they want them to go faster or slower.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. And our final question is, you know, this is so much wonderful information, but at a practical level for a teacher that may not be used to either doing remote learning or used to using technology when they work with their students, how should they approach developing a lesson plan that's going to be engaging and successful in a virtual environment?
Number one is to be completely honest with your students that this is new for you and that you're trying it out. And don't be embarrassed about it. Invite them in as learners with you, because even though they're probably a little bit more familiar or at least more facile with computers in general, or they present that way, many times students will also be doing these kinds of things for the first time. They're not used to it either. But there is nothing worse than the feeling of trying to do something with students and pretending that you know what's going on and then having it not work and blow up in your face. So if you invite them in as co-learners in this experience, it's a really important mental attitude shift. And then the other thing is pick the tools that are going to have the lowest possible number of points of failure to start with. A great example is if it requires a login, that's 1 point of failure that can trip you up. If you only have 30 minutes to work with a kid, if you spend 10 minutes of that trying to get both of you logged into the same thing, that's going to be a problem. So pick something that doesn't require a login, like Whiteboard does not require a login. You just have to send them a link that they click on. Many of those more basic tools like the Flippity, it's the same way. You can do that without them having to sign into an email account or remember a password or anything like that. And then another option is that if you're a tutor working with students and they have tools they use at school, ask them to show you what they typically do. Have them walk you through some of their assignments and then try and adapt those tools that they're already familiar with. And those are a few suggestions for sort of taking the level of complexity, and you're not staring up at the cliff anymore. You're sort of just taking it one step at a time.
Simon makes excellent points about keeping it simple. And I think that's one of the things that teachers have found. There's been wonderful tools out there, but we can't use them all at one time. Everybody has different comfort levels. So keeping it simple, choosing a couple of tools that you're going to learn and implement. And as Simon said, being very honest with the students. And then as your comfort level grows, you can build upon those. But there are many, many ways you can just go through your regular lesson. Think about your learning objective. What is it that you're hoping to achieve? And then think about how that can transfer online. And we have found that many of our teachers have said the same strategies just needed slight adaptations to move online, especially with the synchronous learning. That is the most important way to engage our students.
Great, thank you.
You don't need every lesson to be a home run with technology. You can teach the way that you normally teach, the way that you're used to doing it right now, to the extent that you can most of the time, and then sprinkle these things in every once in a while to sort of lower the load. You don't have to go all in on this and have it consume all of your time.
Great. Jillian and Simon, thank you again so much for that wonderful information. We really appreciate you taking the time to spend your afternoon with us today. And to everyone who's listening, thank you as well for joining us. This will be recorded, so feel free to share it with friends, families, colleagues, and help us share this information with as many people as possible. Thank you for joining. I just want to send out a final reminder for people listening to please consider making a donation to the COVID Relief Fund so that we can work in support as many teachers and students who need our help getting technology, getting access to additional resources as possible during what's turning out to be a long and challenging education and learning process. So thanks everyone for attending. We really appreciate it. Stay well, and we'll look forward to seeing you at some of our upcoming Monday webinars in the future. Take care. Thanks.